This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, welcome everyone to the Board of Public Works meeting for February 25th, 2026. I will make the motion to open this evening's meeting.
I second the motion.
All right. Thomas Salisbury?
Yes.
Leah Strode? Gilson Hogan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Any public speak this evening? We will move on to item number 2, approval of the February 4th, 2026 meeting minutes. Any issue with how they were prepared? No. All right, I will make a motion to approve the minutes as prepared.
I'll second.
Okay, Thomas Salisbury?
Yes.
Leah Strode?
Yes.
And Gilson Hogan?
Yes.
All right. Item number 3, our continued discussion of the water and sewer rates for FY 27, 28, and 29. We are. We received last meeting we had a presentation from Rayburn on a draft report, recommendations. We all reviewed it, and I think some of us sent in corrections and requests for some alternate models. Everyone's okay with it? I kind of was just thinking we'd walk through each of their options and then the options that they generated for us after last meeting. So,
Do you want to go slide by slide here, just down to the new
I mean,
this is all.
This is all the same, yeah. If we want to just
yeah.
start at their option 1 revenue table. Option 1. Scroll down to their first little bar chart and then.
This one?
Yep, and then the next page for the revenue. So basically I'm looking at all of the models, the 4 they prepared, and then the 7 alternates we gave them. All of them meet the funding goals. I guess the key metrics we want to kind of look into, I would like to look into, are their percent of the fixed fee, because that was one of their concerns, that we're kind of riding in the 10-11%, and industry standard is to have a roughly a 20% fixed fee income. And then with our new certified, all these figures, the year-end balances, these were prepared with the assumption that there was 0 retained earnings, because we didn't have that figure yet. That since has been certified at roughly 1.9 million. Yep. So that sort of negates where they have that little line at the bottom, below or above. It makes all the models above because we had that.
How much retained earnings?
1.9 million.
I got that yesterday, so
yeah.
They've got it. I just got an email from her before this meeting that she's going to build that in. She hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, that can be for our final meeting in public.
So what did they assume?
0.
0?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it was, the recommendation is to have at least 25% of operating expenses as a, carryover
Sure.
emergency fund.
Yeah.
The way we've modeled it in the past, due to the age of our infrastructure and the large capital expense outlined in the IWRMP, we like to keep it closer to 40 to 50% in case there's another historic or another, large scale failure like our outfall structure that washed out once, to sort of have it in-house. And the age of our well, some of the well fields and stuff like pumping stations, it's modeling it as sort of a 40 to 50% is where I like to keep it.
And where are those is it the green, the column in green
For
the operational expenses?
well, this is so basically what they're saying at the end of the year. At the end of FY 27, we'd have 1.4 million in retained earnings compared to a 6.2 million is below the 25% threshold. But basically every one of these numbers, you can now add 1.9 million to, which puts them all above 25%, kind of in the 30 to 40% range.
Hey Greg, just a quick question. 1.9 is relatively high comparative to previous years. That's based on usage, right?
Sort of. It's relatively high, but it's kind of like 2 years of our retained earnings.
Right.
We didn't
Really tap into
like,
them
I could be
last year.
wrong, but we did not take much out of there last year, if
Right.
anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a 1-year surplus.
It's not. That's what I
I
was.
think it's more like it
2 year.
kind of shows, I could be wrong, like.
I
don't mean to
think
speak
our
up for
low
but-
point was in 2023, if I
Yeah, we
remember.
got down to about 230 or 40,000.
Yeah, after the Union Street funding and all that.
And so in a quick discussion with the city auditor yesterday, we could kind of confidently say we cleared $800,000 to $900,000 over the last 2 fiscal years, which is why we're back to 1.9.
Right, and because the only reason I ask is because some people might be like, oh, 1.9 million is a lot of money, why would you need to raise rates?
Yeah.
But in reality, it's not that simple.
No, it's not.
And we have
We have-
massive capital expenditures on the horizon that we need to account for.
Yes.
That's what we've been trying, not to say stockpile for, but to buffer against. So rates, historically, this DPW or BPW would go for long times without raising rates.
Right.
Then there would be a large expense or a large debt incursion, and there'd be a large spike in rates. So we've been trying to model it where it's a steady.
It's more of a measured, proactive approach.
Right, because we know we have that list of capital projects, and this way it gives us the funding and the security to secure other funding to tackle them
Perfect. Thank you.
without having to have an emergency rate adjustment or a one-time fee or something like that. So I like to try and keep it as a basically inflation plus adjusted rate change every year to account for increases in everything.
Everything.
Health insurance, everything.
Health
Fire
insurance,
hydrants,
energy, material costs, so that's, it's mostly driven by the outline of the capital expenses we know we're gonna incur over the next 20 years, so. So what I've laid out in this packet that I've prepared, because, it's kind of abstract to look at all of these where it's a 5% increase this year and rate change. So what I wanted to try and model was basically, how does that impact the average consumer on a quarterly basis in a bill increase and an annual, rise in total cost. So I basically built this table and plugged in the numbers for each of the 11 models now. So we could compare them apples to apples of sort of how they impact small users and large users and what sort of the net effect is.
You added seven additional models?
Yep.
Or requested it of them?
Yep,
Okay.
I did them all this afternoon. Well, basically, once I had this table, the only variables are the percentage increases per year, and then it generates the rest, so it wasn't.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so, a couple years ago, we had a conversation about base rates. And there was this acknowledgement that the proportion between the base rates changed over time. Like, I remember it was,
Yeah, we kind of figured out they had initially been set in 2006 and then never adjusted again until,
yeah.
Right.
So I remember there was a
There were proportions.
volumetric, and then there was sort of you had FY
that was
06.
when they were originally set, and then they hadn't really been touched. And
those changed, like the ratio between them.
because, not that we were unaware, but they set this, and then what we had done in the FY20 and FY24 is we had adjusted the 5/8 meter rate. And I thought that they would cascade through, but alls that went into effect was that we changed the 5/8, so they drifted, because this
Right.
one was changing.
Right.
While the rest weren't proportionally changing. So that's why when,
So this is the fee multiplier in effect right now?
no.
Okay.
because we did that to sort of reset them, because these had drifted lower in comparison to the 5/8. But when Rayburn did their analysis, they basically said that this is negligible and disproportionately impacts large users, that they're paying, 50 times the rate of a small meter. And we have so few of those large meters that it was skewing the fixed income to a very small percentage of accounts. So what they, in some of their models, they made the cutoff at 1 inch. And so these are sort of like residential consumer size ones, and these are large scale users, and started to adjust them separately because most of our, what was it, like 98% of our base are these numbers.
Yeah.
So raising the large users does not increase the fixed fee.
Right.
And if you do, it brings it up on, So yeah, that was our interim solution when we modified base fees at the mayor's request. That was just our way to redistribute it after it had drifted from FY20 to FY24, where we were only setting the 5/8 rate. So. Alright, so with sort of what I was thinking of would be a logical approach to sort of digest all the Rayburn information, is to sort of look at each model, go through the pros and cons of it, and say whether or not we think that is one we want to consider. Just try and whittle this down to what we want to bring to a public hearing next month as the proposed rates. So with this one, the model shows tier 1 and 2, but this model only had, was keeping one rate and raising them basically 5% across the board for rates and usage fees or base fees.
Does the next slide get into some of the
impact
discussion
of
that? Yeah.
So what's the downfall of this one? It is on the top slide. One up. So this one is just the whole enterprise will get 5% more because the base fees are going up 5%, usage fees are going up 5%. It doesn't do anything to increase the ratio between fixed base fee income and the usage income. So that's all 5 years stay at 11%. So it doesn't really tackle that problem of it's just passing it along. So it's the same exact model, just growing to cover increasing expenses. So this one is equitably shared at the current distribution, but it doesn't resolve the underlying issue of the fixed fee ratio. And you can see that in this bottom section on my chart. You can see basically the annual increase is about 5%, which you would expect, and that the quarterly bills kind of go up, between $11 and $30, between the 2-person and the 6-person household. So we want to go down to option number 2.
I just mentioned that 1158 per quarter is the impact of that.
For their, I think they have their typical person is 1,600 cubic feet.
Yep, so about a little under $12 per quarter, so it's $3 a month.
Yep.
You want to go to option 2?
Option 2, revenue chart.
Okay.
Does this calculator that you put this, does your tool calculate fixed fees?
Yes.
Where is that?
The fixed fees.
Okay, so this is, I see, so this is a percentage. Got
Yeah,
it.
so the upper category the upper bar is water and sewer usage rates. So the first box is our current rates. 455 and 8 on the if we want to all be on the first page, we can do that. So 450, and then it escalates FY water and sewer by the numbers that are under 5%.
Yeah.
And then same below is usage fees or base fees.
I might not be using the right words, so I apologize, but
Yeah.
I wanna clarify, I mean, the percentage of fixed fees as like the 11%, does this?
I do not. That's why we needed the Rayburn models. This is, my tool only models the rates that we would be setting and how they impact
I see.
residential users on a quarterly basis. And then that's why I wanna use this, because that shows sort of how the retained earnings grow and the percentage of fixed fees, which is what we needed Rayburn and their models for. So option number 2, this is the one where they sort of had a modest increase in usage fees, 0% the first year, 3% the next 2, and 5% in FY 30 and 31, which we're not considering, but we're using for the model.
You want the other one back? I'm sorry.
Yeah, to the revenue table. Yeah, this is what we're gonna be. And the goal of this one was they wanted to basically, in the first year, increase the base fees by 50% to sort of bring them in line with other communities and what a typical base fee is. So that has the hard hit in FY 27 of increasing all meters regardless of size, 50%. And then 3% the next year and 5% the year after that. And what I don't like about aggressive increases in base fees is that they disproportionately impact small users.
Which is most of us.
Yeah. And the way that gets shown in this is at the bottom of page 2. You can see that the effective increase from FY 26-29, the small box in the lower right-hand corner, in the first 3 years, a small 2-person user of 1,500 cubic feet would see a 12.5% increase, while a larger user would only see 8% increase in their bill. And that's built in because of the aggressive rise in the base fee and marginal, basically inflation increase in the usage fees, which is what.
Where are we supposed to see? Oh, there is the 12.5
Yeah, so
effective
the-
net increase.
Yeah, and if you bring it out for the 5-year model, the large user would only see about a 20% increase, where the small user would see a 24% increase, because, the large user, the most of their bill is generated by the usage fees, where a small user, most of their bill is generated by the base fee. So.
Sure.
But it does have the effect of increasing the fixed ratio from 11 to 16% right off the bat. And the sort of percent fixed up towards the top there goes from 11 to 16 to, and then carries at 16, because the large adjustment is made in year 1. So Rayburn's option number 3. So this one this was the first one that splits it into a tiered system where there's a rate set for the first 1,500 cubic feet, and then a tier 2 rate for all usage over 1,500 cubic feet. And they proposed in year 1, no change in the tier 1 fees. It would be our existing FY 26 fees. And then for tier 2, a large jump of 7% in tier 2, and then basically 5% from there out. And for their base fees, for small meters under an inch, they were going to do a 25% increase and no increase for large users to sort of reset that ratio between large and small, and then 5% from there out. But because of, if you go to the revenue table, so if you look at the proposed usage fees on my table, that first year of 7% really hits large users, and then that, with the 5%, that just compounds. So if you look at the effective net increase, it affects large users over the long term, because they get hit with that 7% fee for their usage in the first year, and then that just compounds, and that difference never goes away because it's all 5% from there. So everything else is growing, but that large uptake in tier 2,
Compound interest.
it's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
And you can see by the first 3 years of what we would be setting, it would be 14% for the smallest users and like 16.5% for, a larger household. And by, 5 years out, that goes, from 25 to 28%. So again, it's not really, they all generate the same revenue, but it's sort of who's paying for it shifts.
So, can I interject?
Surely.
Okay, so, Greg, I mentioned this question, so hopefully there's a little preview of it, but who are the large users? I mean, not specifically, like, I don't want to know, like, which address, but, like, generally
Like
are
by
they?
meter size?
Yes.
So it would be, I don't know, like a bank might have a 2-inch meter.
Okay.
A manufacturing facility might have a 4.
Mhm.
A larger building at a school might have a 2 or 3-inch meter.
Right, but those are not reflected in what I'm modeling here. What I'm modeling here are sort of residential 1-inch and under, like a 6-person household is the largest I model for, like 4,400 cubic.
Sure.
Which,
Right.
which they said is about 98% of our
Yeah,
income is from.
this is a minority of
Yeah.
the usage. I'm just curious,
Yep.
like, what would,
Yeah, think of like,
Breweries?
yeah, the brewery, yeah, they might have larger meters.
would one of
Some
the
of them
mill
do.
buildings have
Yep,
one large
Well,
meter that they
yeah.
distributed, or?
well,
There's one that had like a 6-inch, right?
yeah, there's some of them will have a 6-inch, like,
But they're historic from previous use.
most of them have multiples. So like,
I see.
trying to think, I'm going back here, I don't do that much with the water, with the meter stuff anymore, but like Keystone Mill, I'd say,
Right.
I think they have like 3 meters in there. I know there's one that's, relatively small, that's why I can remember it, that they were looking at maybe getting something bigger. I don't remember if we upsized it, or I think we did upsize it to like 1.5 inches. You can get a lot of water through an 1.5 meter though, so.
And then is that different than the large users? Or do those typically correlate?
Like larger consumers,
Yes.
I'd really have to look at that data, cause it's like one person in town can own a ton of properties, right? So they'll have a whole bunch of 5/8 meters in their name.
Right. I see.
Like Pine Valley Real Estate, a lot of them come up in one and they own a bunch of, so they end up kind of showing up as a large user, but they have a bunch of small meters, so it's really difficult to say.
How about a private school in town? maybe?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Got it.
I have finance, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, we don't have like a Coca-Cola that is,
Right.
a mega water user. They're all,
Yeah, we really don't have any one commercial user that stands out above another, like in that respect.
Alright, so with option 3, what I did like about this was the tiered approach, sort of giving a little more granular control. And this one had the effect of basically getting the fixed ratio up to 13%, because they did that 25% base fee increase in the first year. Option number 4. This one is at the request of the water department. Did away with the 2-tier system and did a 5% increase in usage fees across the board, and then did a 10% increase in base fees for 1 inch and under, and 5% base fee for 1 inch and above, or 1.5 inches and above. And as you can see, this gets eventually, in the term that we would be rate setting, would get the fixed fee up to 13%. You bring out the model all the way, it gets up to 14. But because it's a continuous 10% on the small user meter size, it you can see in the effective net, for the first 3 years, it's 18% compared to 17% for a larger household. So it's more equitable than some we've seen, but there's still a disparity in, how it alters small users' bill. And then those were the 4 Rayburn that we saw in the original presentation. We're going to go down to, at the end of the packet, they put our requested ones. So this might look familiar. This was my request. So we go to the rate table, or to the revenue table. So let me explain what I was looking to do. So I actually wrote it down previously. All right, my goal with this potential option was to achieve the steady. So what I basically did was I looked at the 4 that they presented us, and I picked and chose what I liked from each of them. So I tried to get the steady and equitable distributed 5% annual increase for all users that was seen in option 1, while adopting the more aggressive shift to the higher fixed revenue ratio found in options 2 and 4, while utilizing the tiered structure that option 3 presented. So what I was suggesting is that we adopt a tiered system. In the first year, tier 1 water would be increased 2%, tier 2 water would be increased 5%, and then sliding to 3 and 5 for year 2, 4 and 5 for year 29, and then keeping it at 4 and 5 for projection of rates we weren't going to be setting. And the reason I was doing that sliding increase in water rates is to offset, if you look at the base fees, the first year would be 25% for smaller meters under an inch and under, and no rise for large meters. And then followed by a 15 and 5, a 10 and 5, and a 10 and 5.
But we're only setting for 3 years.
Right, but just for, that's what the model, but yeah, that's why, if you look at the very top, they say proposed for FY 26, or 27, 28, and 29, and then FY 30, I differentiate by saying potential. But I wanted to reflect how Rayburn was modeling so we could see the long term, and it also gives us an idea of if it's something we want to continue with. But as you can see at the bottom, basically every year, everybody sees just about a 5% rate increase. And if you look at the net effective rate, they're all plus or minus 15.5 for the first 3 years and 27.5 plus or minus for the 5-year extended. And while we didn't, I think the highest we've seen for any of the models was 16%. This would get us to 14% by 29 and then 15% by 31. So, again, and it's, the net increase is, if you look, it's kind of in line with what I was trying to achieve with option 1, where they basically were seeing a 5% increase, which was basically what Rayburn suggested, because their modeling said like 4.5% accounted for inflation and, admin costs. So they were targeting a 5%, growth in their revenue projections. So that was what I had asked to be modeled. And, the projections are basically the same. Most years it's, about 110% revenue with the one dip in 2030, which all the models basically showed, because that was a high expense year, just based on the capital schedule. All right, and then we get into the next set of...
So I think I misunderstood.
Yes.
I thought the fixed ratio had been introduced.
The fixed ratio had been...
Yes, the fixed ratio, the proportions.
Okay.
I thought that I misunderstood. I thought that was.
No, that was
part
just
of
for
it.
that one event when Mayor LaChapelle we had that sort of special sidebar, like of where she wanted us to reset base fees for 2 years because they had gotten, the accounting department was concerned that we didn't have a high enough proportion of fixed income. Because I think we were sub 10% at that point. So we at that point, we realized that all the meter fees hadn't been basically set since 2006. So we came up with a model to sort of realign them, and then she asked for a 20% increase, I believe,
Yep.
to get us above that 10% threshold at least.
So with alternate option one, you were really aiming for a tight grouping of effective net increases
Yes.
across
I
all
wanna-
of these households.
Because I was gonna say, if we're gonna raise rates, I want everybody to see the same increase
Mhm.
and not be disproportionately borne by
Mhm.
one subset of the population.
And it brings us up to 14% fixed.
Yes. Within the 3 years.
Yes.
So, I mean, all the models do to some extent, some of yours do as well, but you'll see that there's similar issues as to some of the others where some fall on small, some fall on large.
Right, okay.
And I don't know if this will always be the case, but like I can see, after doing all this and thinking about it, that we could do this for these 3 years and then maybe do something similar for the next 3 years and get closer to that 20%.
Mhm.
And then from then we can go to a flat model that would be borne evenly by everybody, we might have to, basically I'm playing with 2 sliders to try and, glide slope it to where we want to be. And eventually we may be able to then just say, okay, there aren't disproportionate raises, everybody's on a 5% or 3% if we find, retained earnings are growing or.
So I think in shooting for any goal, we're really talking about values. So we're talking about we as a community value raising rates equitably. We as a community value moving towards that industry standard 20% fixed fee because we want to set up the awesome professionals who work for the city well in their jobs.
That's the approach I've been trying to do.
Yes.
Because we could, as shown in what was it, Model 2, I think, where they did the 50% increase, we could do a 100% increase in base fees and get to the 20% in a
Right.
couple years, but that is going to be disproportionately felt by households under, 2,000 cubic feet.
So another thing that we value is making sure that people can afford to live here. We value keeping services low, which I understand they are relative to neighboring communities, which is
Right.
great.
But I 100% agree, and I don't think the goal of this is, everybody around us charges more, we could charge their numbers.
Right, exactly.
We don't need to.
Yeah,
have
this
a
is
very- we have a
about
ve-
Easthampton.
We have a very efficient DPW that does quite a bit of work with the money we give them.
Yes.
So we need to raise it enough to allow them to keep doing that, which I think
Yeah.
a 5%, 4.5% to 5% model
Mhm.
gets us there. It's just how do we slide that, how do we
Sure.
roll that in? Like I said, we could do it in a year and it would be hard. This gives us in 3 years we get pretty close, maybe another 3 we get to where we need to be. And I don't think we need to rush it faster than that.
And so it's also not like raising the percent fixed to 30 would actually make projects happen faster because there is also a bottleneck in sort of the capabilities.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, raising the fixed ratio doesn't mean we have more money. It just means more of it we are sure we're gonna get
I see.
You know, it's,
I understand.
that's the industry standard is, you know, Rayburn said if there's a wet year and people use less, you know, a majority, if only 11% of our funding comes from fixed fees, that means 89% is variable,
Usage. Yep.
is variable and cannot be accounted for until it's in the bank. Where if you have a 20% fixed fee, you know you're getting that, which somehow that small percentage makes auditors much happier.
Does.
Oh.
Everybody wants a happy auditor.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's, like I said, in all this adjustment, we're not, that net revenue and retained and total expenses, we're not really changing that number, we're just changing which, whether it comes from the top half of the bill or the bottom half of the bill. The total's gonna be the same that we need to execute what we're
And
doing.
sort of risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that was, basically what Greg had pointed out before, sort of their small household, they use 1,600, we had previously used 1,500, basically sees a $10 increase in their bill per quarter, an 11, then a 12. So, it's $3-4 a month. And then option 2. So from what I understand, these models we're trying to do, you asked for 3 models where basically it was a 10% base fee increase for small users, and then asked for a model rate change of usage rate of 3, 5, and 7. So you'll see how that plays out. With
Yeah.
the usage fees, so on Alt 2, across the board, same split tiered system, 3% on tier 2 the first year, and then 3% across the board after that. And then just 10% on 1 inch and below meters and nothing on larger meters. This one comes out fairly equitable. But overall,
It's not gonna raise that. Yep.
it raises the ratio eventually, but because it's only a 3% basic usage increase,
It's below inflation.
it's below inflation, and you can see that reflected in the last 2 years where we are not capturing, what we need to. So that kind of proves out that we need more than a 3% increase.
Yeah.
So then your Alt 3, which is basically that same model, but with a 5% usage increase. And go to Alt 3, it's that one. This basically lines up that 5% across the board usage increase makes the budget happy. Sort of keeps in line. It's, there's that dip in FY30, but that's what the retained earnings are. You kind of have the buffer from the other years on either side of it. But
Disproportionately impacting higher users.
right, because their usage gets hit with that 5% in the first year on the large, which then compounds the next 4 years, and it affects it doesn't keep pace with the 10% increases in the meter fee, which the small users would see. So it gets the budget done.
But maybe not the best distribution of increases.
Marginally. I mean, it would be, if we didn't have the other model, it might be a considerable, but it's a 1.5% difference between. But also if you look, it's, the net effective is a little bit less, so bringing a little bit less revenue, I think, in the last years. Like you have 105%, I think the other model was like 108 or 9. But, it gets us in the ballpark of earning just enough money, and it's fairly equitable, but, I think Alt 1 was a little tighter.
Yeah, okay.
But this one is kind of easier to explain. I like the
No, I hear.
I like the glide path,
I really like this tool.
yeah,
Can you send it to Greg so I can receive
Sure.
it? Yeah.
it's just Google Sheets
Yeah.
with lots of linked tables and
Oh, I'm sure.
circular logic, but. So Alt 4 is the last plan on steroids. So it is a 7% usage fee, which generates
Yeah, we can skip
way
this.
more income. Well, it's nice to see how it all works out. It generates more income than we need. We're getting quite a surplus by the end. Because this shows a year-end balance of 4 million, but we know that's 1.9 million more than that. So
Almost 6.
almost 6, which is compared to an $8 million budget is like 80% retained earning or ratio. So we don't need that in the bank. Hopefully we'd never need that much in the bank. But just to show how it plays out, it really affects the larger users because they get hit with that 7% increase year one, and then it compounds 7% every year. So small users, let's see, 16+%, while large users would see 20. So Alt 5 is same structures but with a 15% base fee, which I'm sure you're gonna realize right now that 15% hits small users harder. So revenue table for this is, it basically, the 3% funds it all except for FY30, but less. And because that's offset by the increase in base fees, but that base fees are felt a little harder. In the first 3 years, it's not as bad. It's 10% for large users, 12% for small users, but that compounding keeps happening. So by 5 years out, it's 18.5 to 23%. That 15% just keeps hitting small users again and again. Alt 6. So these just keep generating more money because you have that 5% usage fee increase, which in all the other models keeps us solvent, but that extra 15% base fee keeps compounding. So we got in the end of 3 million on here, so basically a $5 million surplus by 5 years out. It's yes.
Can I ask could you guys do things with $5 million extra dollars?
Well, that's the thing, when we talk about that surplus, we have to remember that we'll be going to the mayor every year for X $100,000 to do.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's water meters, repairing the floor at the
Yeah,
wastewater
it's
treatment
not-
plant, 3 new trucks, like it's always gonna be, we're always going to be spending some.
Yeah.
But it is an increase relative to some of the other models. So there is more money to be spent in this case than perhaps some of the other models, right?
Yeah. But we have to balance the pace at which we do things with how fast we take that money from the community.
And the equitably and reasonably raising rates.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Like, I could use 10 new trucks, we're not gonna get 10, we might get 3, but
yeah, I mean, I think it would get to the point where if we had too large a surplus 3 years from now, we would have a hard time setting a rate increase.
Right.
With a clean fee, it'd be like, we have, we need to only set rates at 100% funding from here on out. We wouldn't, if we had a large surplus and needed to set rates, we would probably keep them the same to burn that down. Rather, it would be a hard.
Rather than continue, right, I
It'd be a hard ask as a community to say, we need more, or,
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying,
I totally do.
where I'd rather have that slow ramp than,
Mm-hmm.
high ramp,
And then nothing,
let rates stay,
I see.
and then have to ask for a high ramp again the next time we needed to build the enterprise fund back up. I'd rather have a build it, use it, build it, and to be fair, these projections, like right now, our retained earnings are 1.9.
Yeah.
But I went back and looked at the tie and bond models for our projection, and they had projected that we'd be about 2.5 million. So like, take these with, we use them, these are their best guess, not best guess, but their model based on the capital funding. What projects will come up that we don't account for, money will get spent.
Yeah, I mean, when we get to Main Street in the next couple of years, is a good example. I think the projected non-participating cost for that's like 1.1 million. So, and we did make some pretty strong increases over the past 3 fiscal years, and that's because of that, we're not looking at huge increases now to be able to be in pretty good shape.
I see.
Yeah,
So,
the last 3, I forget offhand, but they were in double digits.
Yeah.
We're looking at a 5% increase, where before it was,
It was
12,
like 15 to
15.
18, yeah.
right,
So that got us to where we are now, because we did have to do one of those ramps to build up from $200,000 in retained earnings to where we are now. And that'll give us a gentler glide path for the next set of rates. So,
okay, so
Yeah,
I guess
ask
the question I have,
I don't mean to like info dump.
oh, no,
It's just,
This
this
is-
has been in my head since the last Rayburn meeting, and I've gone over it and gone over it. So in
I'm
my
getting
head,
so into it too, though,
Okay.
so I'm right there with you. I guess my question is like,
Mhm.
with,
I mean, do we want to go through the last 2
Yeah,
and
okay, yeah, let's do
then, because I think they're gonna say the same, like, so, what are we at? I lost 6. Alt 6. So this was, yeah, as I was saying, 5% usage fee, gets us where we need to be. 15% base fee, probably gets us a little further, but the small base fees. Well, this one actually, no. This one you did hit a sweet spot
yes,
between the 5% for everybody, and with the zeros in the first year for the tier 1, it does over time even out. You can see year 1, most of it is borne by a larger household, 1% versus 4%. But then it starts to flip as the base fees increase and start to add up for the small users. So in the first 3 years, they're all about 15%, 15.5%. But over time, that would start to drift to small users as that 15% just keeps compounding. I mean, we like I said, we're only setting for the first 3 years. This model would work for those first 3 years. You would have to readjust
Yeah.
after that, because if you let that keep going, that 15% just keeps compounding on the base fees.
this would, it would prompt a reevaluation
Yes.
at the next.
Yeah. So this one will be completely sufficient for 3 years of setting. And then we would reevaluate and come up with something else. The only difference between my alt 1 is it is part of a larger, like that glide path would keep working. And we could reevaluate it in 3 years and say, do we want to do this for another 3 years? But also, if you just look between like these, in 5 years, it's like a 30% increase, where in 5 years, I think mine was only 27, so it's not compounding as aggressively. All right, and then there's one more, which is
Probably too much.
all steroids.
Yeah.
No, it's good to know that it's good to see how
Yeah,
changing different things literally compounds. So this was a 15% base fee for small users, and then 7% for everybody after year 1 for usage. And yeah, this one would get us to basically 4.7 million, so 6.7 million on an 8.2 budget is more aggressive than we need to be. Even by 29, it's 3 million, so it would be close to 5 million on a 7 million budget. So more aggressive than we need to be. But good data point.
yeah.
You need Rayburn to earn their money. But yeah, so again, this one in the short term is a little harder on larger households. Oddly enough, 5 years out, it starts to align. But like I said, it's more money than we need to go after at this point. But I think these were good data points, like you with the 3% and the 7% highlighted that 5% is kind of the sweet spot, which is what Rayburn had suggested. It's what my model used. So that's sort of another triangulation on 5% is kind of where we're comfortable. I think that's, based on nothing, not nothing, but I was worried when we came into this that we were gonna be looking at about an 8%, which is less than we had done in the previous rounds, but that was my gut, was that we were gonna see about an 8% annual increase. But, Rayburn's modeling, they're tightening up our billing and stuff like that, I think.
And investing in meters too is huge. I mean, I was talking to Clayton at the water department yesterday, we've got our unaccounted for water down to 8.5% this year, so it's a huge improvement over last, and a lot of that is, I'd like to be able to attribute that to just more aggressive meter replacement and getting out there and getting after these ones that people that haven't let us in to change them, or have had a non-functioning meter and an estimated bill for a long time, so it's really great to be that far under 10%.
Yeah, so,
What was it last year?
13.5. We've been working on it, like I think it was
it was close,
like 18.
yeah, it was close
for
to
a while.
20 when.
It was
when we
over
started-
20.
When we really started looking at
When I
it,
got here, I think in 2016, it was like 22%.
which
and then-
is,
And down to 8.
And yeah, we've been chipping away at it over the years with meter, a lot of it's metering and finding things that aren't perfect. And but to hear that yesterday, I was like, wow, finally, like that's the progress we want to see. So if we can keep it under 10%, it starts to change what we have to do for water use restrictions and how stringent they are, how strict they are.
so, yeah, I mean, not that I wanna raise rates, but I think being able to keep it to like basically an inflation plus adjustment is kind of ideal. I think it's more than fair, based on the capital work we have scheduled, so. All right. Now you know what's in my head.
Yeah.
So I stick around these meetings for every 3 years.
Yeah,
I
right.
spring into action.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
Otherwise, it's just minute approval.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
now it's time to act.
yeah.
So, I just wanna say something else about the values.
Mhm, yeah, no.
That, there are people that I think we should consider who can't come to public meetings
Mhm.
because they don't exist yet.
Right.
Or they're not voting yet, or whatever. And so, one of my questions is at this, water and wastewater and, storm sewer,
Mhm.
at this spending level and budget, how long would it take to get through the IWRMP?
It's a 20-year plan, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's a living document that I don't think you ever get all the way through it, to be
Okay.
honest.
It's like painting a bridge. You get the
yeah.
one end, you start.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, the original scope of the IWRMP was modeling a 20-year
Mhm.
capital investment.
Mhm. I see.
And by then,
And by then there will be new things.
that was things that were critically past their service life,
Mhm.
approaching their service life,
Mhm.
anticipating their service life. By the time we get to that, if we did another one, there'd be a whole new set of things
Right.
approaching their service life.
Right.
The job of the DPW is never done.
No.
You're fighting.
No, I tell everybody all the time,
Fighting
we come here, we do our jobs for a number of years and we leave it all better than we found it, that's all we can do.
I mean, how long have I been on the, I mean, there's been a monumental undertaking compared to the decade or two before that in the last, almost 10 years.
Yeah, we just get after finding the funding and doing what we can.
Trying to get to it before it fails.
Exactly.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So it's just kind of never ending, sort of like you pour more money in and it's always gonna be needing more money anyway.
I mean, that's just the nature of infrastructure.
Right.
It's kind of like owning a house, right?
Yeah.
Just like always something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, will the list get smaller? I hope so, because I think we're doing more preventative work than, a lot of the IDO-RMP was deferred maintenance.
Yeah, we work
Which
really
we're-
hard at being more proactive.
And Right, and then it gets into, you know,
Operational maintenance.
projecting useful life, and then you plan for, you know, like, it gets into really
It gets into the
proactive.
budget, so it's not an emergency line item, that's a request from the enterprise fund.
Mhm,
And this is all part of it. The rates are a huge part of that.
mhm,
You know, for years, rates were held very, very low, and there wasn't funding to do a lot of things, so.
So
Yeah,
there might
like-
not be as much of a backlog in the future because of this investment in
Exactly.
maintenance as well.
Correct. Yeah, it's, you have to do both
Yes,
at this point,
exactly.
and then eventually, ideally, it would just be maintenance and proactive replacement,
Mhm,
which would still be large capital expenditure, but
sure.
managed and not.
And so how do we move towards that? I mean, this,
Mhm.
basically, but
Yeah,
it's about how much, how fast, and when.
Yes. Well, I mean, the scope of this is we need to establish the rate and billing or rate and usage structure for the next 3 years. That's the scope of this.
Sure.
But it's all in the service of making sure Greg and the team can do whatever comes up, regardless of whether it's on the list or not.
Sure.
And going after funding when we can. I mean, that's also a
That's a
large
huge
part of it.
Huge, yeah.
Is the amount of work we've been able to get done with the rates we had.
So pick a few and.
Well, that's what I guess I wanna see, like, do we, in the past, when we've had the large public hearings, we've had the consultant present.
Mhm.
But do we want to have them at the public hearing to do like a walkthrough?
Yeah, I think it would get, yeah. I think that'd be
But
a
I
good
don't think
idea.
we need them to go through all 11 models in the
no,
public.
No, I'd like to maybe get to 3 maybe
Yeah.
2.
So, and we don't need to decide that tonight, that's obviously a lot that's been info dumped.
Mhm.
But if we wanna come back, I mean, at this point, we're gonna have a meeting next week, right?
Yes,
Just because of the
Wednesday, yeah.
schedule.
So if we could narrow it down to those, to that couple, 2, 3, whatever.
Right, and then we
next
could
week,
give
that'd be
that back to Rayburn to sort of develop, retool this into a public hearing presentation of sort of their background, their work. The 3, 2 or 3 models that we are considering in the public hearing, and then we can select one in the public hearing and, vote it in for.
Yeah, with the hope of maybe having our public hearing on March 18th.
Yeah.
Yes, that was what I wanted to ask about.
So if we could get to that 2 or 3 by next meeting, I can try to have Rayburn here for the public hearing on the 18th.
Yeah, so the 18th, we'd have a small, our small normal meeting, and then followed by a public hearing where that would be the single topic.
And we would vote then.
I would, we would discuss it in the public hearing. Rayburn would give their presentation. We'd discuss the options presented. One of us would make a motion for which model we would like to, which set of rates we'd like to enact. And then we would say, yep, that's the one. And I would prepare, just sort of like, FY 27 through 29, like basically this box.
Mhm.
And then that would go into the, that would get recorded, and then, the billing and Rayburn would establish that tier system if we went with one of the tiered systems.
Yep.
And set those rates, so that's kinda, so next meeting, we would whittle this down on the, first meeting of the month. Tell Greg which models, Rayburn would prepare that for
Yep.
the 3rd week of the month. That would give us time to set the public hearing, right?
Yes.
We'd
We'd have 2 weeks.
if we did it in the,
If we voted to set the public hearing for the 18th on the 4th, that would give us enough time.
that would get
Yeah.
it, we can get it in the paper the next day or so,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
If not, we could have it later, but
Yeah,
if-
but I'm very confident that we can.
I think we've done that in the past, yeah. All right. Any continued discussion on topic number 3?
There's plenty to chew on.
Yeah, leave it you on.
Alright, I'm gonna take this,
All right, with that, I will conclude the discussion for this evening and make a motion to continue the discussion at our first meeting in March.
A second.
Okay, Tom Salisbury,
Yes.
Leah Strode? Yes. And Gilson Hogan? Okay, motion carries.
All right, item number 4, director's report.
Okay.
You got anything?
I don't have a lot, but I do have a few
It
things.
snowed a couple times,
So,
right?
yeah, yep, it did. And we were,
A couple times more.
we were all set to get started again on the aerator project. That's what I'll start with. They were gonna do to mobilize on Monday. They're out of Taunton.
Past Monday?
Yeah, they're out of Taunton, so they're like buried in snow. So we are waiting to hear more from them about when they can get back. Wishfully think it would be this coming Monday, but I don't know. There's a lot of snow out there, so. Main Street, where MassDOT reviewers are continuing to add some comments, and we're looking to get something back from them next month at this point. Things are just slow. Guys did an excellent job over this last storm, Sunday into Monday. The forecast was pretty uncertain, so we just had to make decisions based on the information we had. We closed them, we had that 7 p.m. closure for Mountain Road, which they said it was gonna snow all day, and we wanted to kind of ration the salt we had, so we were planning to close it at 7. Guys, we kept it open till 9. It wasn't really, it just didn't do what they said it was gonna do, so that, and then the longer part, we had the parking ban went in a little earlier than it probably needed to, but we were really just, we want to get it out a few hours ahead, and just acting off the forecast we had was just made the best decisions we could, so. It's nice when the forecast is like certain, but sometimes it's not. Fort Hill Road, we do have the the design package and bid documents just about finalized. We'll hopefully have that out in the next couple of weeks. Diane and Mandy, our engineers, are just doing some final reviews of some of the quantities and the way that they structured everything in the bid. It's just to hopefully prevent any surprises once we get out there. We never want to bid something and then have the quantities be off, because then I need more money. It's never fun. So we are with that project will include paving Fort Hill Road from East Street to River Street and resurfacing the bridge deck. And then we are also carrying, they call it an ad alternate, so we'll have a bid number to continue paving from River Street to Clapp Street to get all of Fort Hill Road done. So that's a good candidate for paving because we don't have any utility work to do down there. And we need to do the bridge. Fort Hill? Yeah, we put a lot of, we patch it a lot, yeah.
Gosh.
And it's, I'm looking forward to not having to put so much hot mix down there when we do it all the time, but, and we need to get the bridge deck sealed up, so. Look, it's been a long time coming to get that out there.
Yeah.
That's it for tonight.
All right. Thank you and
Yeah.
the department. Any further discussion on anything we've touched on this evening? Well, I thank you for your time, and I make a motion to adjourn this
everyone.
evening's meeting.
I second.
Thomas Smelter?
Yes.
Leah Strode? Yes. Gilson Hogan?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.